let's try that again. Cut. Okay, I'm ready, I think. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Beck and I am a registered nurse in Western Australia. I'm a new graduate, so I only graduated in November and only started my job in February. So I'm like 3 months into the nursing world and it's crazy out there at the moment. It's been nuts. Anyway, that's not the point of this video. As you know by the title, the point of this video is my top tips to ace your nursing placement. So this is something that I feel very passionately about, and when I was writing these tips I was getting so excited. It was a little bit dramatic. I'm gonna get straight into the video. I have got to go to work in like an hour and a half, so I don't have the longest time. So tip number 1 is your typical tip: be on time or early. There's nothing worse than as a student running late, and as a registered nurse having a student on the ward and having them late. It's a no-go. Like, honestly, never ever ever turn up late. Always be at least 10 minutes early. So number 1, so that everyone on the ward knows there's a student on the ward, and number 2, time for yourself to prepare and for the coordinator to decide which nurse you're going with. Otherwise you can rock up and then not get allocated a nurse, and it's really uncomfortable for everyone involved. So yeah, be on time and early, especially for your first day, because finding the ward is sometimes really hard, finding the hospital's entrance is sometimes really hard, and like staff parking and stuff. So my first day I would always aim to be half an hour early. Number 2 is show initiative. So when I was a nursing student on my first hospital placement, my nurse preceptor came up to me and she was like, I do not want you to follow me around all day. She's like, I want you to show initiative. Like, there is nothing worse when you're a nurse and you literally have someone attached to your hip just following you around. Like, if you have 5 patients, like if I'm just going to do a set of obs in a patient's room, you'll pretty much know that another patient's room has a set of obs to be due. So instead of kind of following me into that room, or me following someone into that room if I was a student, I'd be like, okay, their obs are due, their obs are due, you go there, I'll go there. Like, it helps out incredibly, rather than just like, I don't know, almost just not thinking. I know that sounds kind of harsh, but like, it's so true, and it's so helpful to have a student who is proactive and thinks for themselves. Also, if your nurse has a time planner, just instead of going up to their time planner or seeing their time planner and being like, oh, you've got obs due, would you like me to do it? Just go and do it. Like, go and do it 5 minutes early, start doing them, come back, tell the nurse what the obs were or whether there was any abnormalities or if they were fine, and cross it off the list. Like, you have no idea how much you'll impress everyone on the ward and how much people will want to like show you things and teach you things once you do that. Number 3 is don't say no to learning opportunities. If you're like, I know that it kind of, it's a touchy one because you don't want to push yourself too far, but if you've got like half an hour left and someone says to you, like, of your shift, and someone says to you, oh, do you want to come to theatre? Or, oh, do you want to see this cool thing? Try your hardest to say yes to those, because they won't come up when you're a nurse. When you're on the ward, you have like so much responsibility and you have to work. You don't get to just be like, oh, let's go watch this, let's go watch that. And so take advantage of learning opportunities. I remember I was on break once. This is really morbid, but it's the reality of being a nursing student. I was on break and there was a patient who was deteriorating on the ward, and during my break the patient passed away, and the nurse kind of bobbed her head into the staff room and was like, hey Beck, this patient's just passed away, do you want to see the process and help out with the process of what you do once someone has passed in the hospital? And instead of being like, well, actually no, I've got like 15 minutes left on my break, I'm gonna sit here and enjoy it, I was like, hell yeah, I need to see this, I need to know what to do, and I need to be exposed to death. And this is so morbid, but you know what I mean, like I needed to experience that. So for me, that was a priority rather than having the rest of my break. There's like 2 sides to that, obviously, because you don't want to push yourself too far, but I found that saying yes more than saying no was great for me. Likewise with when I went on my placement with RFDS, there was so many times where I worked like 12-hour shifts and I did not say no to any flights because I was so just excited about being on that placement. I was exhausted by the time I finished, but it was so worth it. Like, I did not miss anything that came up. Being like that made more opportunities become available to me because the nurses and the doctors saw that I was keen, and so they made things happen for me, which was amazing. Number 4 is ask how you can help. If you've gone through the TIE planner and there's absolutely nothing due and you can't do anything too early, or there's nothing you can do on your own, even if your nurse isn't busy and you're just standing there talking, ask the other nurses on the ward if you can help them. When I first started my grad, like I was a month in, there were some students on the ward and she was so helpful. She saw that I was busy and wasn't busy with her nurse, so she came up to me, she's like, how can I help you? I was like, oh my gosh, can you please just do this one set of obs? And she's like, yep, no worries, I went and did it. And so the next day she was on, I was like, I've got this complex wound, do you want to do it? I've got this subcut injection, like, do you want to do it? And I was searching for her to help her out because she was helping me. So I wasn't her preceptor at all, and when I was a student, I would do the same thing. I would go up to the other nurses and see if I could help them, because you could be placed with that nurse the next day and then they know that you're going to be helpful and you're going to be a good student that they want to have with them. Number 5 is be prepared. So always have on you alcohol wipes, scissors and tape, and the TEDS measuring tape is the most important stuff to have. I always have it in my pocket. It's such a good feeling for someone to like yell out down the corridor, does anyone have any scissors? Or be in like a clinical scenario where you're doing acute care to a patient and someone's like, does anyone have an alcohol wipe? And you're like, yeah, and you pass it to them straight away. That makes you seen. And as much as you're not like, you know, trying to be like this massively seen, oh my goodness, look at me, I've got everything prepared, it's so helpful to have just stuff in your pockets, and it makes a big difference. Even as a nurse, same thing goes. Number 6 is be prepared to get your hands dirty and do the not so pleasant jobs. Yes, I'm exposed. I'm under a blanket. This goes to a certain extent. When I first started my nursing, I was in a carer's role and we were doing aged care placements and everything was bed changes. You just have to get in and do it. If you do, like especially at the start of your placement, if you get in there and help with that sort of stuff and don't be afraid to help with that, like even vital signs sometimes can get a little bit tedious towards the end of your placement. You're like, I want to see the cool stuff and I only want to be involved in like cool wounds. Nursing is vital signs. Nursing is taking people to the toilet. And the more you help with that, the more that the nurses on the ward will see that you're not just in it to see the cool stuff and you actually want to be a nurse, if that makes any sense. So yeah, get your hands dirty. So on the other spectrum of that is, don't be afraid to tell someone that you are too busy to help them. This one is like a touchy one because you have to be helpful enough and an asset enough to be able to do this without being lazy. Lazy is the only word I can think of it, but more so like where your priorities stand. So I was on a ward and there was this one nurse that no matter what I was doing, she would expect me to drop everything to come help her or to clean a patient for her or to do the showers for her. She wasn't my preceptor, nothing, but she just saw that I was a student and expected me to do everything. And in my first week, I did. I 100% did it so that I was being helpful, doing all the stuff that I needed to do to, you know, make me proactive and make me, I don't know, learn. I learned heaps doing that. But then there was one stage where I was about to go with, I think, a doctor and a nurse to do like a catheter, or maybe not the catheter, but to do something that I hadn't done before. And I was super excited and I was with my preceptor, and then this nurse came up to me and she's like, can you do the shower for me? And it took so much in me to tell her, no, I'm sorry, I'm busy right now. Like, I don't think I've ever been so scared in my life. But because I did that, I got to actually be there, like see what I was there to see and help with what I was there to help with. Like, and it was a huge deal for me. So don't be afraid to prioritize yourself. That's the only time in my whole 3 years of nursing that I ever did that, because I would always just say yes, 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 yes. And so that's kind of the important takeaway for that, is you do still have to say yes, even if sometimes you don't want to. I don't know if that's gonna make sense at all. Anyway, number 7 is ask questions and keep a journal of all your questions. This is probably something that I regret not doing, is keeping a journal of like questions I'd asked and just kind of advice I'd been given, because I can't remember pretty much any of it. But I asked for a lot of questions. Oh my goodness, like, and I am so thankful that I did ask those questions, because it helped me so much in the long run, learn so much, and I still ask so many questions. So I feel so sorry for those who work with me, because I bug everyone. So number 8 is think outside the box and think critically. So instead of just doing things because someone's told you to do that, think, why am I doing this? Why am I going to put TED stockings on a patient? Why am I taking this cannula out? Why am I rechecking this person's blood pressure with a manual blood pressure pump? Like, think critically all the time for everything you do, and your like brain will be like poof, it'll be like, oh my gosh, epiphany after epiphany, because the amount of things that we kind of just mindlessly do, like even tracking bowels, like asking patients every day, have you had your bowels open today? Like, it seems like such a tedious task, but it is so important to do that. And if you think about why, I'm not going to go into it because I'll probably go on a massive tangent, but it is so important. So just think why for everything, even if that means asking more questions, which goes with number 7. Number 9, show that you care about the patient. So instead of walking into a room and just kind of expecting the patient to be alright with you being there, like, put yourself in the shoes of the patient and make sure you communicate with them, make sure that you ask them it's okay that you're watching. Like, a lot of the time it's really vulnerable procedures, like having a catheter in or a catheter out, and a lot of the time you kind of just walk in there and like be like, yes, I'm about to watch my first catheter, and you forget that this person is about to have all of their private bits out and a tube shoved up or shoved out of somewhere. And like, imagine being in their, like in their shoes and being vulnerable like that, and then having an extra person in there as well. So like, just make sure that when you're walking into a room, you're still not forgetting to introduce yourself to the patient, cracking a few jokes. I'm terrible like this. Absolutely terrible. I will make light of any situation. Usually my patients appreciate it. Sometimes they don't, and they don't get my humor at all. And I'm just like, okay. But just make sure that you're always wanting to provide a good experience for your patient. Number 10 is don't be scared to speak up. I know as a student I was terrified to tell anyone anything that they were doing wrong. When I was doing my placement with the RFDS, we were transporting a newborn who had like, I can't exactly remember what they had, but we were helping the team that had come up from Perth transport the baby onto the plane and take them off. So there was like a few doctors around, or a student doctor, the nurses obviously, and the few pilots. And it was an intimidating zone, because me as a student nurse, surrounded by all those professionals, it was scary. We had just got a nasogastric tube down them, and the doctor had flown up, the whole team from Perth had flown up to meet us, and we were like exchanging the baby to the next team. And the doctor was holding the baby, and it was quite critically unwell, and the nasogastric tube was going into a little container, and the container, instead of being supported, was hanging over the doctor's shoulder and was like pulling against the baby's nose and against where the attachment of the nasogastric tube was. And if that had have hung for longer, it potentially very easily could have ripped the nasogastric tube out of the baby. Not good, A, because you'd have to put a new one in. Not good, B, because that'd be super uncomfortable and super embarrassing for everyone involved. And number 3, obviously it would hurt the baby, and the mum would be like, oh my goodness, and it's like, it would just be a bad situation, obviously. And I was literally like, it was the middle of the night, it was freezing cold, it was windy, we were next to the plane, everyone was rushing about to try and get all the stuff on board and get everyone off so they could go. And I was standing outside the plane with the doctor and the baby, and I was doing a few things, and I noticed it, and I literally stood there and stared at it for like 30 seconds, terrified to say anything. Like, I literally had like a debate inside my own head. I was like, am I right? Am I right? Maybe he's doing it for a reason. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe it needs to be like that. I was like, what if I say something and I'm wrong? And I was so scared to say something just about this stupid tub that was hanging over the doctor's shoulder. And then finally, I just said to him, I was like, I just grabbed the tub and I was like, hey, just so you know, this was like dangerously hanging over your shoulder. And I just put it, like, because he was holding the baby and didn't have any arms to spare, I like grabbed the tub, put it over in between the baby and him so it was supported. And he was so thankful. He's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And I was just like, that was like such a good moment for me, because I realized, don't be scared to speak up if you feel like something's wrong. And even if the person that you're saying something to is wrong, they will appreciate it so much more if you say something than if you just sit by and watch it happen. I think that's all my tips. I only wrote down 10. Another thing quickly is, don't be negative. Like, even if you don't like the placement, even if you're having a really tough time, try not to complain about anything. Just enjoy the experience, be super thankful for being allowed the opportunity to go into a hospital and learn these things, because it is so important to get that clinical experience, and you learn so much. I really hope you enjoy this little video. It is 12:54 and I've got to go get dressed and ready for work. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to check out my other videos if you enjoy my videos. I hate outros. Okay, so goodbye.